Hello everyone. So M.A.G 2.0 is out and you might be wondering how it controls with the move compared to the way the public beta did. Well, as you will see in this new video, M.A.G 2.0 shows massive improvements. On-screen pointer is now a little bit more visible. The biggest improvement though is how the pointer behaves. It looks like Zipper rebuilt the wall sensitivity algorithm from the ground up because the pointer now feels much more stable. They basically increased the dead zone so that unintentional movement when pulling the trigger doesn't register. As you can see better here, fairly small movements are still registered, but not the tiniest ones. Perhaps it's too big of a dead zone now, which makes it difficult to fine-tune aim in some situations, but at least you can now pull the trigger with more confidence. For those who haven't seen my M.A.G beta video, here is a reminder. And here is a side-by-side comparison between the jumpy pointer behavior of the beta and the steady one in the 2.0 version. Interestingly, there is no recoil when using the move, which I guess makes sense and also helps compensating the unstable nature of the wall pointing dynamic against the rock-solid steadiness of the DualShock aiming. Iron sights were also improved. Alongside the old, laggy setup that has the iron sights fixed in the middle of the screen, we now have the option to detach it and move it around with the same accuracy, stability and responsiveness of the pointer. You can even turn around as fast as you would in normal aiming mode. This new implementation also means you are never gonna lose your target when swapping aiming modes, because the iron sights show up exactly where the pointer is, retaining the same control behavior, assuming you properly configure the controls. About that, watch the following portion of the video closely, as you will find it useful when tweaking your controls. Each aiming mode has its own settings about pitch area, turning area and pointer sensitivity. So here I have a turning area value of 50 for normal play and a turning area value of 15 for iron sights. Now, since swapping aiming modes actually swaps those values as well, if those values are different, you get unintentional camera movement when swapping near the edge of the bounding box. Notice how the camera rotates as I switch to iron sights. That's because the iron sights bounding box is smaller than the normal aim one. Reducing it further increases camera rotation upon switching. Same thing happens in the opposite scenario. Here is what happens when the iron sights area is bigger than the normal aim one. Swapping from normal aim to iron sights near the edge of the former bounding box seems fine. Not so when doing the same by pointing the iron sights at the edge of its bounding box. See how the camera rotates when switching to normal aim. Now, what this all means is that you want to have those turning values as close as possible to each other. In fact, by matching them you get no unintentional camera movement whatsoever. Here I have them both set to 15. As you can see, I get no camera movement when swapping from normal aim to iron sight, as well as when swapping from iron sights to normal aim. Problem solved? Not really. There is in fact another aspect of the control system that affects the whole thing. And that's the pointer sensitivity. You might not believe this, but pointer sensitivity affects the size of the bounding box. Check this configuration. Turning area at minimum, pointer sensitivity at maximum. Please pay attention at when the camera starts rotating as I move the pointer between the edges. Now, the way the bounding box works in M.A.G is different than what you might believe. Camera doesn't start rotating when the cursor reaches the edge of the bounding box. It does when you rotate the move to a given angle. Since sensitivity affects the correspondence between rotation angle and pointer movement, the lower the pointer sensitivity, the bigger the actual bounding box is, and vice versa. Here I am reducing the sensitivity, leaving the turning value to 0. Notice how the bounding box area has been increased as a result, despite not having changed the rotation area value at all. Bottom line, when tweaking the controls, keep in mind the different pointer sensitivity settings will ask for different camera rotation values if you want to avoid unintentional camera movement when switching between the two near the edge of the respective bounding boxes. My humble suggestion is to set the pointer sensitivity first. Find what suits you the best with both normal and iron sight aiming, and if values are different, tweak the rotation area values accordingly by doing the edge test you have seen before. Wow, was that boring? Let's make things more interesting by showing you how this whole motion control thing translates into actual online combat. As you walk into the battlefield for the first time, you will get owned. Again, again, and again. That's normal. You can't expect to perform well at your first go with such a brand new way of controlling things, especially if you are relatively new to the game as I am. It took me about a day of full M.A.G immersion, skills and equipment upgrading, and constant control tweaking to start meaning something worthy for my teammates. Until it eventually clicked and I began performing better. And better. And better.
Enemy boss is taking A!
Going back to the DualShock 3 now feels just wrong. There is something intimately more rewarding about killing people with a move that I just can't live without it anymore. Perhaps it's the added effort it takes that makes the killing more rewarding, not sure, but it does feel good. How good? Eventually this good.
We cannot let them fall into enemy hands. Respect and operation. Enemy recon UAV. Enemy strafing run inbound. Fire mission approved. Sensor cells inbound. Our transport's been stolen. Take it out. Repair that bunker. I need a medic! Thank you. Stand by, reload!
They planted charges at the AAA battery. Fire mission approved. Our bunker's been repaired. Request confirmed. Firing to effect.
Before ending this video, I need to mention a couple of things. As suggested in my previous video, some degree of aim assist was indeed added since the beta. It's subtle, but it's there, and it helps keeping your reticle on the target without feeling like you're cheating. It works only in a normal aim mode, by the way, and at relatively close distance. The other thing is about the scoped aiming. Sadly and oddly, Zipper removed the option to set the relative bounding box from the beta code and simply left the sensitivity one in. What this means is that scoping is still as difficult as before, with the added extra issue related to the overlapping bounding box we have discussed before, which causes annoying camera movements whenever you switch to scoped aim. Its fixed bounding box is so small you always lose your target, unless it is exactly behind the cursor in the middle of the screen. Perhaps this is an intentional annoyance thought as a compensation for the lack of barrel wonder when using the move, but still it is annoying. These issues aside, in my opinion M.A.G clearly shows the high efficiency of the move in a first-person shooter environment. It plays very well, so well indeed that not adding move support in future shooters, if not building them around the motion controller in the first place, would be a crime. There is so much more you can do with it beyond changing the color of the sphere, which is something M.A.G does, by the way, by having the sphere colored differently depending on your faction, which is pretty cool. And this is it. Hope you enjoyed this overview. Thanks for watching. Passo e chiudo.
They're pulling back.